Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my backyard. There was a time for 3 years I was out here pretty much year round, but especially in the spring and summer. First started off with fruits and vegetables, and then the last year and a half or last 2 years, this whole yard was full of flowers. But I'm not out here for that today. I'm out here to give you some updates on my upcoming travel and what I've been doing in the meantime and what's been going on. And so there's a plane always here in this part of Texas, planes flying overhead, but we just go with the flow, as my mother used to say. So just give me a minute and I'll be right back. So it's a beautiful day, and I actually went out to run errands today, and it just came up on me to come out and make a spontaneous video. And what I wanted to show you, I had to search high and low for it. Books. I have so many books, and what I'm doing now is narrowing the books down to what I'll take with me on my travels, because as you know, we can only have 50 pounds, 2 carriers in the cargo, 50 pounds, and then we can bring one on board. I think that's 15, so I have to be really selective. But I had to search high and low for these books that I'm going to show you, to the point where I just got a little frustrated. But alhamdulillah, I'm no longer frustrated. I'm here. And just to give you an update, I was supposed to be traveling to North Africa, parts of North Africa, starting this month, actually on the 3rd. But I had to relay that, or delay it rather, until have neighbors around, so I kind of want to keep my life a little bit private. But for you all, you know, I'm more open. So I have to delay that. My mother, she passed away. Peace and blessings be upon her. But as we Muslims know, we do not grieve like the rest grieve, because our hope is not in the dunya, in this world. We do not live for this world, because we know that the hereafter is so much better, especially when we bow our will to Allah. So I have a greater hope, a wonderful hope, and that hope also includes my mother, because we want to honor our parents. But for those of you who may have fallen short and you're Muslim, you know that it's not over. We continue to honor our parents. And if you want to know more about that, I won't go into much detail, but I do want to show you one of my books. And I'll just show you the stand right here, just a moment. Okay, so I've been doing some work out here in the backyard. But one of these books, a lot of traffic also, a lot of people from the West Coast moved to Texas, so traffic and the environment overall just it's not the same, to say the very least. I left it. Give me a moment, I'll be right back. I'll have to go get it. Okay, so I have to go get the book, but this is the book. It's Etiquette of Life in Islam. Okay, so this book, I am about almost halfway through. Okay, I got a stick under my skirt. I might leave this in just so you can see what we go through. Okay, I think I'll leave that in just so y'all can see what we go through when we make these videos. It's not as simple or as easy flowing as it seems. But this book, Etiquette of Life in Islam, by Adab-e-Zindagi. This book here, I'm about halfway through, and I just finished chapter 3, Decent Living. And this chapter, Decent Living, is all about service to our parents. which that is actually next to God, next to Allah. That's how important it is. So if you want to know more about that, how you can actually continue to honor your parents even after they have passed on, this is a book. This book is a good book for you to have, and I'll bring it up close so you can see it. Okay. So I think I'm going to just keep it going, this video. I was thinking about just taking this clip and just deleting it and starting all over, but I'm not going to do that. But like I said, had I been able to just start right when I got in and got the camera set up, the iPod, man, it would have been so easy flowing. But mashallah, Allah knows best, so I'll just keep going. And the main thing that I wanted to talk about, actually what inspired me, is that, and that's another book I forgot. So I'll just put the book right here because I forgot to bring it out. Servants of Allah, those who were enslaved during the transatlantic slave trade. About 4 years ago, I was planning on going to West Africa because that is actually where my bloodline goes back to West Africa. About 45% is Nigerian, and then we have Congo, Cameroon, and so on and so forth. But as a Muslim woman here today, first and foremost, I just want to speak on why I truly do believe that African Americans, or rather Black Americans, those who are descendants of those that were stolen from Africa, why I believe our journey should definitely be back to Islam, because many of our forefathers, our grandparents, were stolen from Africa and they were brought here to the Americas, specifically the United States of America. What I found when I was planning on learning Swahili, because that is the language you want to know if you're going to Africa. You definitely want to know Swahili because most of West Africa, East Africa, Tanzania, they know Swahili. So these are the books I was studying from. Actually, crossword puzzles. And I'm going to tell you something really significant what I found out. I just want to give you an idea of the track that I was on to learning Swahili, and this was before I became Muslim. And so I have the Swahili grammar for introductory and intermediate levels, and but just so you know how serious I was, I even have my first Swahili alphabet book, picture book with English translation. So even for the little kids, if we want to really learn it, kind of learn it quick, the basics, get children's books that teach you how to speak a language, and beginner Swahili word searches. So I have these, and I must learn Swahili. What I learned from these books, the crossword puzzles on Swahili, the Swahili language, is that a term that just about all Black Americans use, and probably some other people too, I don't know, but I've definitely heard it amongst Black Americans and for generations. My grandmother, she passed in 2018. She was 97, so she would now be 104 years old. So we called her grandma, not grandmother, but grandma. And so I know that the Africans, when I was purchasing things off of this shopping platform called Etsy years ago, they something fell from the tree, so I probably should have had a hard hat on out here. But anyway, I noticed that when I would purchase, the men that were making clothes, they would say "ma." That's how they referred to me, as in grandma. And I thought that was really interesting, and I looked it up, and it's basically a term that they call all women mother. Basically, they're calling them mother. And so I wasn't studying Swahili then, and I only studied it briefly a few years ago, but I'm going to really start studying it more once I leave here. But when I was studying Swahili, quickly I found out during the crossword puzzle that mama, and that's what we call my mama, my mother, we call her mama. And this has been for generations, mama. And like I said, all the Black families that I knew called their mother mama. And there were some that would say mother. I never could get with that. It was always mama. Well, where do you think the term mama came from? Some of you probably guessed it already. It is a Swahili word. And Swahili is a mixture of Arabic and different African languages. The word mama is Swahili for mother. So why am I bringing this up? Because most of us, our people, were Muslims when they were captured and enslaved here in America. They were Muslims, 30%. And a good indication, if you want to know, maybe if your great grandparents, the 9th, 10th generation grandparent, were Muslims, if you call your mother mama and you have been doing this for generations, and even more so, grandma, that's a good indication. And so I can go into much more detail on this. There are certain customs that we do today that was practiced in Islam. One of them is walking your visitor. So when you have a visitor that comes to your home, let's say they walk to your home in the neighborhood. So what you would do is walk them to a certain point. Let's say maybe you walk them a half a mile, or let's say you walk them to the bus stop, or whatever. That is also a practice, and it's spoken about in the Quran. Just one moment, I'll show you. So this is Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith, and I have 1 through 9, all volumes in one book, Sahih al-Bukhari. So it's spoken of here. Unfortunately, I didn't write it down, so I can't tell you where, but once you start reading it, you'll find out. And also circumcision. That would be another one. Now, I know that there are those of us who say we're Hebrew Israelites, but what I would definitely always tell anyone, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're undertaking, even if it's a religion that you're contemplating becoming a part of, research, find out about it. And you might be surprised, and it may sway you whether to go ahead with being a part of the religion or not to. So that's just in everything. But of course, it's spoken of in the scriptures about circumcision, male circumcision, starting with Abraham and his son Ishmael, and then also later Isaac. Isaac was the second son. Speaking of that, there's a book that I introduced to you. It's about 6 weeks now that I introduced it. It's with the peoples of the world. This book was published, I believe, in 1916. An account of the ethnic origin, primitive estate, early migration, social evolution, and present conditions, and promise of the principal families of men. I have a short video introducing this book, so you can check that out. But it also talks about the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, the Arabs, the Egyptians, and great races of mankind. This is what this book says. But the author was under the delusion of white supremacy. And indeed it is a delusion, because there's no such thing as white supremacy. And of course, when people go around conquering and taking land and resources and stealing artifacts, and their museums to this day are all full of it, that's not supremacy by no means. And also, just to expound further on that, I'll just give you an idea of this man's thinking, if I can find it really quick. So he goes on to say, instead of giving them honor by what they have given to society, the ancient Hebrews, he says, the Semitic races have, on the whole, been next to the Aryan races in achievement and renown. Excuse the noise. This is true of the thought and the deed, which in their combination constitute the essence and tangible form of civilization. The Aryan races have far surpassed the rest of mankind in subduing the earth in subduing the earth. So that's his idea of being civilized. The Aryan races have far surpassed the rest of mankind in subduing the earth and holding dominion over it. They have surpassed in their power to think and speak and know. So he distinctly made a separation from the Aryan races and the Semitic races. They have excelled in every variety of physical and mental achievements. The continents and the seas have yielded to their adventure and conquest. In the worlds of material nature and of thought and purpose, has been almost exclusively derived from the intellectual activity and acumen of the Aryan peoples. After these, the Semitic peoples have been next in achievement, but by no means equal. Delusion of white supremacy. This is what this is. So this book is heavy. I will probably not be bringing this book with me because, again, I have to make a choice and choose really choice selective books. So that one I may not. But what I wanted to say about this book, in this book it speaks of the Hebrew language, Aramaic or Aramaic, and the Arabic language. It says that these languages are basically the same. Let me see if I can find it. Also, I'd like to read this portion of the book. It says, the first seed of the Semites is still in dispute. The primitive tribes of this stock, they have come from the highlands of Armenia. So notice he said the primitive tribes, but yet he said that the Semites were the next in civilization to the Aryans, but he's referring to them as primitive. So everything he says about the Semites, how primitive they were, you do your research and you'll find that what he's doing is flipping the script. Some ethnologists would place the primitive seat in Chaldea. Others would make them to have taken their rise from southeastern Africa, the Semites. So that would be the Hebrews and the Arabs. So it would be safe to go with the latter, that they took their rise, the Semites, from southeastern Africa, and those areas would be Angola, Botswana, Comoros, Eswatini, Lesotho, Madagascar, Malawi, Mozambique, Mauritius, Namibia. So that's more than likely where they took their rise, the Semitic people. Certainly one of the oldest forms of the Semitic languages was that which we find in the Aramaic inscriptions of Nineveh and Babylon. Also, it goes on to read on another page, Aramaic and Hebrew are but slightly divergent varieties of the same tongue. And if you do a Google search on Hebrew and Arabic, because I just mentioned Hebrew and Aramaic are slightly divergent varieties of the same tongue, but if you do a Google search on Hebrew and Arabic, those two languages, they're also very closely related. Also, towards the back of this book, it goes into the history of the Arabic people. Now, the Arabic people have always said that the Hebrews were their cousins. But this man, this Caucasian man, says that it's not true. Are you going to believe him, what he says about a people that he doesn't come from, or are you going to believe the people themselves who are telling you who they are, where they come from, their history? I choose to believe the Arabs. And also, in the scriptures, speaking of Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac, it tells it all right there that there is relation, blood relation there. And also, too, for century after century, individuals have taken it upon themselves to learn the Quran, the complete reading in Arabic. So what this has done is preserve the language, while the Hebrew language is basically no more. But then again, not really so, because the Hebrew language and Arabic as well as Aramaic are basically just slightly divergent varieties of the same tongue. So if you're saying you're a Hebrew, or Israelite and you want to know the Hebrew language, study Arabic. So of course, you know, those that are under the delusion of white supremacy, they're not as bold and outspoken as they used to be 100 years ago. And here's an example of that boldness. So it says here, whatever we know and think and invent and discover in the worlds of material nature and of thought and purpose has been almost exclusively derived from the intellectual activity and acumen of the Aryan peoples. Can you believe that? And so this is what this delusional person had to say. So let me read that again. He says, whatever we know and think and invent and discover in the worlds of material nature and of thought and purpose. Okay, material nature. So around this time, well, actually this was maybe about 20 years after that Leopold finished robbing the Congo, right, of the rubber resources. But yet, under the delusion of white supremacy, whatever we know and think and invent and discover in the worlds of material nature and of thought and purpose has been almost exclusively derived from the intellectual activity and acumen of the Aryan peoples. After these, the Semitic peoples have been next in achievement, but by no means equal. When someone's spewing a lot of nonsense, always look for the truth and actually get books and find the truth in it, because more than likely it will be there. The Hebrew language. I'll read a few sentences on the Hebrew language and how it became extinct. The language was employed by prophet and scribe and poet in the production of that literature in which the ancient Hebrew mind is seen most clearly reflected by the people of the Western nations. Then came the conquest and exile of Judah. The language reeled under the blow. For a while they maintained it in their banishment, but at length intermarriage and the prevailing speech of their captors, together with the pressure of authority, brought about the modification which we find of the original tongue in the later period of Israelitish history. But a popular speech grew up, and the Old Hebrew was henceforth restricted to the ceremonies of the religion and the teaching of the schools. So a popular speech grew up, and the Old Hebrew was henceforth restricted to the ceremonies of religion and the teaching of the schools. Aramaic became the language of the people. For literary uses, Hebrew in its pure forms receded and was supplanted by the Aramaic. Many of the later books of the Bible, even the Psalms, are strongly marked with the Aramaic dialect, insomuch that by the age of the Maccabees, the old language had disappeared, both as a vernacular and a vehicle of literary expression. If you Google search Arabic and Hebrew and the close association, you'll find that Arabic also is closely related, as Aramaic is closely related to Hebrew. All three are closely related. Very little difference in the language. The next video that you see, I will be in North Africa somewhere.